The refinery, as the name suggests, refines raw resources into materials and intermediate materials that are used to produce the weapons, buildings, and vehicles that are used in Foxhole. The refinery can refine, salvage into basic materials, or Bmats, salvage into explosive powder, or Emats, salvage into diesel, components into refined materials, or Rmats, sulfur into heavy explosive powder, or Hemats, coal into gravel, iron into iron alloy, copper into copper alloy, aluminium into aluminium alloy, and separate wreckage into Bmats and/or Rmats. Refineries are indicated on the map by the hammer icon. To quickly locate one, press M to open the map, and while holding the shift key, left-click the hammer icon in the legend on the left twice. This will turn all other icons off and only the refinery icon on. To refine your raw resources in the refinery, simply drive your truck with raw resources to the refinery. Make sure you get close to it, but do not block the road or the entire access. Press E to open the refinery menu. The top left will show the inventory of the refinery, the bottom left will show your or your vehicle's inventory, the middle will show the refinement panel, and the right will show the refinery's public stockpile. In the top of the refinement panel, you can set the refinement process to either personal or public. Setting this to personal will mean that the materials produced will stay in the refinement panel and can only be picked up by you. Setting it to public means that the materials will be deposited into the public stockpile of the refinery. To refine salvage into basic materials, simply left-click on the salvage icon in the first recipe. This will pull 20 salvage into the refinery and will refine that, at a ratio of 2 salvage to 1 basic material, into 10 Bmats. Hold the shift key and left-click the salvage icon to submit all the available salvage into that recipe. As you can see in the refinement panel, this will take the refinery a little under 6 minutes to process. To make diesel, the standard fuel most vehicles, mines, and power producing structures use, you can shift-click on the salvage icon in the second recipe, the diesel recipe. This will take all the salvage and refine it into diesel at a 10:1 ratio. 10 salvage will be turned into 1 can of diesel, where each can of diesel holds 100 liters of diesel. Refining salvage into explosive powder, or Emats, is done by shift-clicking the salvage icon in the third salvage recipe, which will pull all salvage from your inventory and refine it into Emats at a ratio of 5 salvage to 1 explosive powder. To turn components into refined materials, or Rmats, left-click on the components icon in the fourth recipe in the refinement panel to pull 20 components at a time into the refinery. This will start the process of turning components into refined materials at a ratio of 20 components to 1 Rmat. Shift-clicking the icon will pull the entire truck empty. If you have a trader with raw resources, you can select that by clicking the small trader icon in the bottom left to open its inventory. Here too, simply hold Shift and left-click the components icon in the Rmat recipe to pull all the components out of the trader and into the refinery. The fifth recipe will refine sulfur into heavy explosive powder. To use this, bring sulfur to the refinery and left-click the sulfur icon in that recipe. This will retrieve 20 sulfur at a time from the inventory to be turned into Hemats. This will happen at a ratio of 5 sulfur to 1 heavy explosive powder. To start turning all available sulfur into Hemats, simply hold the shift key and left-click the sulfur icon in the recipe. Refining coal into gravel is also done in the refinery. For this, simply drive your flatbed with the resource container to the refinery. Park close to the loading dock of the refinery and hop out of the flatbed. Walk to the refinery crane and press Q to hop in. Hold the right mouse button to aim the crane on the container. When you see the connection icon, left-click to hoist up the container. With the container on the hook, hold the right mouse button to aim the crane at the loading dock. When you get the connection icon, left-click to drop the container onto the loading dock. Once the container touches the loading dock, it will open up the refinery menu. Scroll down in the refinement panel to find the sixth recipe that will turn coal into gravel, and shift-click the coal icon there to pull the entire container empty at once. Then click the Package Loading Area Equipment button in the Actions panel to package the container. Once it is packaged, aim the crane at it, press left mouse button to hoist it up, aim at the back of the flatbed, and left-click again to put the container on the back. If you want the materials you make to be accessible by everyone, you can change the refinery mode to public by clicking the drop-down menu in the refinement panel and selecting public instead of personal. If you change this setting to public, all recipes that are currently being processed will go to the public stockpile. Materials that were already refined in the personal queue will stay in the refinement panel for you to pick up. If you want to switch back to personal, simply click the drop-down menu and set it back to personal. This will make it so that all materials that are finished after this change are put into the personal queue again. To pick up the materials you produce, simply left-click on the materials you want to retrieve inside the refinement panel. This will pull all materials, or all that will fit into your inventory, as stacks. Note that these stacks are not crated and cannot be placed inside a personal stockpile. Materials in the personal refinement panel will be available for pickup for as long as the expiry timer has not run out. If the expiry timer runs out, all materials inside the personal refinement panel will be put into the public stockpile. The expiry timer can simply be reset by adding any raw resource to any of the recipes in the refinement panel. If you want to be able to store the materials you produced into a personal stockpile at a seaport or storage depot, you can retrieve them directly as crates from the refinement panel. Hovering over the materials icon in the refinement panel will show you how many you need to retrieve them as crate. Retrieving them as crates is easy. Right-click the material icon and select Retrieve All as Crates. This will pull out the materials as crates: 100 Bmats into one crate, 1 can of diesel into one crate, 40 Emats into one crate, 20 Rmats into one crate, 30 Emats into one crate, and 20 gravel into one crate. Any material that could not be crated will be left inside the refinement panel. Word of note, only materials retrieved as crates directly from your private queue can be stored in personal stockpiles. Materials that are stored inside the public stockpile of the refinery can be retrieved by either left-clicking, which will transfer 20 materials or 1 can at a time, or shift left-clicking, which will transfer 60 materials or 3 cans at a time. Public materials can be crated in a container, seaport, or storage depot, but can only be stored in public stockpiles. Besides using normal transport to retrieve materials from the refinery, some other vehicles can be used to take finished materials out of the refinery as well. The Fueltruck, for instance, can be used to retrieve diesel. Open a refinery menu from within your Fueltruck. Diesel can now be pulled from the public stockpile, which will take a while. Or you can instantly fill the Fueltruck by simply left-clicking the diesel can icon in the refinement panel, which will pull all available cans, or as many as will fit, into the Fueltruck. The Dumptruck can be used to transport explosive and heavy explosive powder and gravel in bulk as well. Open a refinery menu from within the Dumptruck and simply left-click the icons of Emats, Emats, and gravel in the refinement panel to pull all available materials into the Dumptruck. The Dumptruck cannot handle these materials in crated form, nor can it take any of the other materials made inside the refinery. Another way of bulk transporting materials is with the help of a container. When using a shipping container, you can retrieve all materials made in the refinery by simply right-clicking their icons in the refinement panel and selecting Retrieve All as Crates. If you use the resource container, you can only retrieve Emats, Emats, and gravel, but in higher quantities than in the shipping container. And if you use the fuel container, you can only retrieve uncrated diesel cans. If you do not want to process raw resources yourself, or want others to be able to use raw resources to make their own personal refinement queues, you can simply submit the raw resources into the refinery stockpile. With the refinery menu open, right-click on the materials inside your vehicle or container inventory and select Submit All to Stockpile to transfer the raw resources into the public stockpile. As always, a big thank you to Crowd9er for helping to make this script make sense and take out the worst mistakes.